The neurotic part of his personality is still the dominant part, so like nothing really has been able to overtake him, you know?
It's not a bird, it's not a plane, it's Superhero Slate. It's a modern podcast where we talk about everything that's great, like movies, TV, superheroes. It's Superhero Slate, oh yeah.
Hello everyone and welcome to Superhero Slate, the show where we run down the latest superhero entertainment news.
We love TV, movies, and superheroes, so let's talk it all out.
My name is Chris Dillard.
And my name is Mike Royer.
And this week we catch up with the God of Mischief in his new trailer. We'll talk about that right out the gate. Disney is preparing for the parks to open back up, and we'll tell you why. This is a big deal.
The light at the end of the tunnel gets brighter and larger every day.
Yeah, God, knock on wood. Knock on wood. Netflix and Sony are make a streaming deal. They're buddies now. And more.
I totally forgot about that streaming deal too, so it'll be fun to talk about. I'm not a religious man, but I feel like the closest ritual I have in my life to religion is knocking on wood. Like, it's something that I literally do. Before we started recording here, I was telling you about my wife's second vaccine, and I, like, in order to not jinx myself, I was compelled to reach over to the molding closest to my computer and microphone, and I knocked on it. So I will always be knocking on wood for the perpetual eternity.
It's about as Midwestern as soaking everything in ranch, Mike. So that's what we get. I mean, it's just a habit around here.
Well, a wealth of ranch. I mean, if we're talking about food right now, Chris, you warned me ahead of time that this new fangled McDonald's chicken sandwich was not very good. And I got it yesterday, specifically because I found out that there's this limited time pies at the McDonald's. And I never get the pies. Like, I'm not an apple pie fan of like I'm actually, in general, I'm not a huge fan of apple pie. I'll eat if it's in front of me because I'm not a picky person. But they have like this new guava cream pie, and I love.
Is
guava,
it regional?
man.
Because I don't see Kentucky knowing what a guava is.
I wouldn't be surprised if it was regional, but at the same time, I didn't even know it was a thing until like a random person who lives out here mentioned it on Twitter. So I ran to my closest McDonald's, and I was like, "Well, while I'm here, I might as well try this new chicken sandwich." And man, a letdown after letdoing. The chicken sandwich.
I tried to warn you so bad.
It was rubbery and chewy, and I mean, like, it's just like, I don't understand why everybody is putting their chicken sandwiches in the like these foil baggies. Like, I know it's kind of like, I think it's like a thing. I don't know if Chick-fil-A originated it or if they're just the biggest restaurant that puts their sandwiches in like these foil baggies. But I think it's doing a disservice to the sandwiches in general because you're kind of like steaming it, and I just don't think it's doing the sandwich any worth. So I wasn't a big fan of that. I even got the spicy one, and it was just okay. And then the guava pie was all right, a little bit of a letdown. I feel like the pastry that encompasses the McDonald's fruit fillings need very dominant flavors because it's not the best pastry in the world. So I have a feeling the apple pie is probably still better. That's what I was eating this weekend.
So I'm going on a journey here because I'm the person who has a McDonald's app on my phone. And no, not a mention of a guava anywhere on this.
You know what? I mean, if we just really have to nail this home with the McDonald's ordering experience, did you know all day breakfast is gone? I mean, I guess I'm not a McDonald's power user, and I don't know if if this is participation only, but I checked like 4 McDonald's in my area. None of them are serving breakfast after like 11 anymore. Well, and I think it's partially due to COVID, but
I would say, they probably a lot of people weren't going to McDonald's for a while there. I honestly, I'd be surprised if I could find anything around. I feel it was more like an empty promise, like, hey, we're going to do this for a little bit and then disable, like, and then take it away when you least expect it. But I've never tried to go get breakfast after 10:30 in the morning.
A large portion, I'm sure, of our listener audience has had a brush with working in the food service industry, and the last thing you want is a more complex menu. So I'm sure the McDonald's workers did not like having a full menu that was including breakfast that they had to execute 24 hours a day. But the McGriddle is the highest point of human engineering when it comes to fast food. Nothing will top it. And it doesn't help that there's billboards around town that are showcasing the chicken McGriddle, which is just a chicken and waffle sandwich. And I've made it before on my own, before it was a menu item. I got the McChicken, I got the McGriddle, I Frankensteined it together, and it's it's glorious. It's absolutely amazing. So now I'm gonna have to wake up and get to a McDonald's before 11 so I can try it.
I'm gonna have to go ahead and disagree. I really don't like a McGriddle, to be completely honest. I'm gonna go before we get off McDonald's. We have strawberry and cream pie. I don't know if you guys have that out west.
Oh, we don't.
And cherry and cream pie seems to be our regional one. By the way.
I would be down with that cherry. Love
nothing
fruit
beats
pies.
the holiday pie for me. It's just essentially a funfetti icing inside of a pie shell, which is fantastic. But Wendy's breakfast, Mike, that's where I'm going to go ahead and challenge you to try a Wendy's breakfast, because they have a honey and butter chicken biscuit that is to die for, and they don't serve potato the circles, little whatever they're called, hash rounds with a hash brown. They serve mini potato wedges seasoned as their side at Wendy's. So if you want to live a little larger, a little higher on the fast food breakfast scale, I challenge you to step into a Wendy's or drive through a Wendy's and just see what they have and sample it.
You know how radio stations every once in a while have to like break in through their scheduled programming to remind you what station you're listening to? Mm-hmm. This is just a regularly scheduled reminder that this is a Superhero Slate podcast. We will talk about superheroes eventually today, but I love talking about food, so I'm absolutely not stopping.
We haven't had a food rant in a hot minute either. So that's where we are with that. I have a friend who works for Wendy's corporate, on the I think it's the mobile experience. He's probably gonna shoot me for getting it wrong, but it's he's very much in the Wendy's thing. So he talked about how they went through how they designed their breakfast menu and how they streamlined it so they didn't have to make new kitchen appliances and stuff, so they could use what they had to make it. And he's like, well, what's your feedback? And I'm like, this is by far the best breakfast menu I've had in a long time. I dare say it's above Chick-fil-A, which I've not had in a long time. But
see, I will never tell anybody that fast food is healthy or something that they absolutely need in their life. But I will say it's an engineering and logistical phenomenon from what these restaurants have been able to do. I will soft transition us right now into the QuaranStream with a YouTube channel that my wife and I have just been absolutely devouring over the pandemic, and a YouTube channel self-named Matt Stoney, who is a competitive eater. I think his rank has kind of fluctuated just like all athletes, but I think right now he sits at the number 2 competitive eater in the world, which is crazy because I looked at that ranking and Kobayashi's not there anymore. Didn't he have a Lance Armstrong doping scandal at some point in time? I think Kobayashi's been ousted from the competitive eating world. But Matt Stoney is just this kid from the Bay Area who is a competitive eater, but also facilitates this really fun YouTube channel where he practices his competitive eating, and he also does challenges and he records them. And every night just before we go to bed, we watch him devour 4 or 5 different things, and then we just head to bed. And it's just crazy. This kid can just down 15 pounds worth of food in a setting. He just he'll eat things extremely fast, or he'll eat a lot of things over a period of time, and it's fascinating. It's really crazy though, because I think the most intense thing we saw him eat was a bunch of Sour Patch Kids. I think he went to a bulk food store. So imagine however large a Sour Patch Kids bag would be at a bulk store. Not gigantic, but it's candy, so it's a pretty big bag. And he was set to task. I think he was trying to eat 3 of those things in one sitting, and the candy literally ripped his mouth up, and he was bleeding by the time he was done with it. And it was just that's not always usual. That just goes to show you how hardcore he is. But he has billions of views, so he's a big deal. So if you want to dip your toe into the world of competitive eating on YouTube, go check out Matt Stoney. He's fun to watch. He's got he's kind of got a set of characters that surround him. He's kind of got this dopey kind of stoned out brother named Morgan that's always behind the camera, adding his colorful low-toned commentary. Then he has like a mysterious girlfriend that's never been on the camera, but you can always hear her. So I don't know. These are just like the niche things that you get into when you start to or really become a fan of a YouTube channel. Like other people are just like, I have no idea why you like that, but that's what YouTube's for.
Well, you can do anything. I just did some research while you were explaining this. Kobayashi, he didn't get in trouble. He just wouldn't sign a contract with Nathan's hot dogs for exclusivity, so they like banned him from all their competitions for like 8 years. Kind of
Weird.
Yeah. So I mean, it looked like he didn't really do anything like bad. They just didn't want. I mean, they seemed like Nathan banned him for some reason, but it wasn't like he was like doping up
Chris,
or anything.
It sounds like we need a competitive eating documentary to get to the bottom of this.
I don't get through this quickly because I've seen too many fucking ads for this WeWork thing for me to be happy about it being on the show. So
this was we saw this on Hulu last night. We just decided to throw it on because every once in a while you're just in the mood for a documentary. That's just the type of entertainment you want to ingest. You want to be entertained, but also you feel like you want to come away with something after you watch it. It's like a fun way to watch the news, if you will. And this is really just kind of like an expose mainly on the CEO of WeWork, not necessarily so much of what the business was, but about the guy that created it. And surprise, surprise, he's kind of like he's like every other CEO you've ever heard about with kind of like these psychopathic, tendencies, wasn't out there necessarily killing or murdering people, but he's just a really good talker, a really good liar, really good at like massaging the truth. So if you just kind of want to watch the craziness that happens with real estate and business, I would say it was entertaining. This one will hold your attention, but not the craziest expose you've ever seen. All this information's basically out there.
And just so people know, WeWork is the company that essentially buys real estate and lets you have mobile offices. Like you can rent a space for them to work if you don't have it. So you don't have to buy it. So like this company was founded like 2010? Is that right?
Yeah, it's kind of like the crux of the whole documentary of just like, is this a cutting edge Silicon Valley technology company, or at the heart of it, is it just a guy leasing property and just kind of creatively dividing up a unit that he's leased? And then it kind of juxtaposes it with the crazy valuation. That's the big part of the story that really hit the mainstream of this was like, I think this company was almost evaluated as high as $50 billion. And then seemingly overnight, it just dropped to like almost nothing.
The only thing I remember is because I worked in real estate before my current job, and I remember hearing about this throughout the whole thing, right? Corporate, purchasing of real estate. And then I think it was 3 years ago, he was one of the CEO at the time was essentially paid to leave the company and never talk to them again, pretty much.
Yeah, exactly. When you kind of have this crazy, like hostile CEO that's just making the investors crazy, you give them what they call a golden parachute, enough money to say, just leave us alone. Just leave this thing you created alone because you're ruining it even worse.
Yeah, exactly. And I think they've kind of bounced back since then, haven't they? But I mean, pandemic-wise, probably ruined them because everyone was working at home, and they probably like, oh shit, now everyone can literally work at home, and we don't need to do these spaces. But
WeWork is definitely still around, but I think they've kind of removed the cult of personality away from it. So
I remember hearing. And now the problem is, and this isn't your fault. I'm just seeing because I've a lot of searches recently have been real estate in my search thing. I see this ad for this all the time. It will not go away because of that.
I mean, I know you and your wife are exploring new real estate opportunities in your area. Oh, wow. It sounds like we've totally turned into a real estate podcast here. But there is a brief part of this documentary where they talk about We Live, which was an experiment in like a co-living space, which is just a fancy way to say adults living in a dorm. So you get a little bit of that in the documentary, which is crazy.
So a hotel.
Yeah, basically
a hotel, a fancy hotel.
Spaces.
There you go.
Yeah.
Well,
so there you go.
It sounds like that CEO maybe Danger was his middle name.
Oh, thank you for transitioning
You're
to the other
welcome.
thing I watched, which is Austin Powers,
Yep.
which I've seen pop up more recently on social media, which is a good sign for HBO Max, which is where it's streaming, because this is, I would say, almost an exclusive power that Netflix has had in the past. When a movie lands on Netflix that hasn't, really been in the zeitgeist in a while, the power of Netflix, of it being a tastemaker, will suddenly push it over to social media and people will be talking about it again. And I've seen HBO Max been doing that recently as well. All of the Mummy movies were on HBO Max, just recently, and Brendan Fraser has had another resurgence on, at least trending in my sections, and also I've seen people talk about the Mummy movies, and now I'm starting to see people talk about Austin Powers again too. So if I was a HBO Max CEO or an executive, I feel pretty happy that they're kind of breaking through to the trending section with your streaming service. But I think all of the Austin Power movies are up there, if I remember correctly. I don't remember off the top of my head if Warner, AT&T, HBO owns them or if they're just leasing them. But as of right now, you can watch them there. And it's been so long since I've seen the first Austin Powers. We rewatched it and had a great time. But the big gut punch, make you feel super old, is Austin was frozen in the 60s and brought back in the 90s. And the big thing that's been hitting my timeline is if they had to remake this movie now, Austin would have been frozen in the 90s and brought back today, which makes me feel so old. But also at the same time, I like the idea of imagining somebody that's just so unauthentically just like entrenched in like 90s culture, like a character being frozen.
Someone
and
from
brought...
Seattle, the grunge movement. Like,
yeah, I've seen a lot of people also talk about, there's a South Park episode where like this dude in the 90s gets frozen and then gets brought back, and it might play similar like that. So long and the short of it is, go check out Austin Powers on HBO Max, because it'll make you feel old. Or I guess if you're a younger folk and you've never seen it before, go watch this classic.
Well, here's the thing, and I think I mentioned on the show, I watched it a couple weeks ago, maybe a month or two ago on HBO. Because it's a short movie. It's like an hour and a half, right? Very quick. Mike Myers. This is peak Mike Myers. And I believe as a young child, I did not realize he was playing both Austin and Dr. Evil at that time, because he didn't really. They were very different characters, right? They looked. As the series progressed, they kind of gave up the charade a little bit, and it kind of delved more into like, oh, we're not being a serious. It sounds weird, not being a serious parody or skewer on the spy genre that Austin Powers kind of was. The other ones are like, okay, well, now we have him playing Fat Bastard, and now we have him playing, Gold Member, and I'm like, he doesn't even try to look different. He's like, oh, it's Mike Myers in quick makeup because they want to go quickly. And, I really enjoy that, but I found myself, the problem with this movie is when I watch it, I find myself quoting it for the next week afterwards, and to a fault. Like, there's quotes you can do, and you mentioned this earlier, like off the air, like, oh, this seems like a movie, Chris would know the quotes to, and I do. Sadly, I do. So lately, since I watched it, everything, I was like, oh, that sort of thing, it's not my bag, baby. Written and signed by Austin Powers, like the whole Swedish made penis and larger pump section. Like I just find myself doing that part for some reason, and I'm like, why? And I'm like, oh yeah, that's because it's so funny.
It is funny that you mentioned how they kind of they use Mike Myers to play different roles. When you're rewatching the first film, you kind of forget is they shroud Dr. Evil's face intentionally in the first act of the movie, almost like so the audience isn't supposed to know who he is. So it's like a reveal, like halfway through the film, that Dr. Evil is played by Mike Myers, and it makes me wonder, how were the trailers cut when this movie came out? Did they just put that out there in the open that he was playing multiple roles, or if it was a surprise? So I thought that was kind of weird and kind of funny. But Austin Powers, go check it out. We got to watch the second one next, because I think a lot of iconic stuff comes from the second one. Like the second one was like a very successful sequel. Like, you don't get that a lot nowadays. A lot of sequels that come out are always like, people always like complaining, comparing it, especially comedy sequels. They don't always go over as well. But the second one, I would say, is almost more iconic than the first one.
I I'm the other way. I couldn't tell you any line from the second one right now.
I want my baby back, baby back, baby back, baby
okay,
back.
you got
Baby back.
that's Mini Me, isn't it? I forgot about him being introduced.
That's Fat
in that
Bastard
one.
wanting to eat
Right.
Mini Me.
Mini
Yep.
Me was introduced that. See, I always do that, because he's like, who throws a shoe? Honestly, like whenever I take my shoes off, when I come home, I toss it across the room. Who throws a shoe? It's just. It's something about it's not an innocent movie by any means. He's literally trying to have sex with everybody in this movie, but like it's still an innocent, fun movie. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's still if this fits for what Saturday Night Live actors.
Yep.
So.
Hashtag
Speaking of
90s kids, Chris.
Speaking of innocent critters that are not so innocent, Mike, because they straight up murder people.
Oh no,
Ewoks.
Chris. Just before we started recording today, I was just kind of like bouncing around on Disney Plus, while I was eating my lunch. What am I gonna watch here? And I was like, oh yeah, they added all this weird vintage kind of Star Wars stuff on Disney Plus.
Yeah.
Let's jump into this Ewok show and see how long I last. And to answer that question, not very long at all. I watched about maybe 4 minutes of Ewoks, and if you're just curious, go ahead. But I don't think this is gonna intentionally hold anyone's sober attention. It's bizarre. It starts off with the weirdest theme song. It sounds like it's sung by somebody who lives in a van down by the river, who like is just surrounded by a bunch of banjos, but there's not any banjos in the song. It's just like this dude, just like, it sounds like he's sitting 20 feet away from the microphone. So just the quality of the theme song is just very bizarre in general. And also the character designs are so funny because I think almost every mammal I've ever seen on planet Earth, and also in any depiction of any science fiction, they might have weird tendrils, they might have hair, different limbs, crazy horns, but they always seem to have white, at least parts of their eyes, right? Like, what do you call that? It's not the iris, but just you got iris, you got pupa, and then you got the white stuff that's around it all, right? Mm-hmm. The weird thing they did with the Ewoks is if they have like a purple Ewok, they give like this purple shade to the eye, and if it's a brown Ewok, there's like a brown shade to the white part of the eye. So like every Ewok looks like they're tripping on acid in this show, and it's so weird. It's bizarre. It's a trip, that's for sure. So I could recommend at least watching the first couple minutes of the first episode. I scrolled through the thumbnails of the second season just to see how much it changes, and it does look like the character models and the designs kind of get changed over time. So maybe it gets a little bit more watchable as you move on, but you don't have to pay for it. If you're already paying for Disney Plus and you're just curious, go check out Ewoks, I guess, just to experience the weird theme song, man. It's so bizarre.
Well, I think it's more of a nostalgia thing because, like you said, they added the other Ewok movies as well, the live action ones. I heard about them when I was younger, but I didn't watch them. But it's also a good plug to say, hey, the Genndy Tartakovsky Clone Wars is on there. Volumes 1 and 2, not Volume 3 though. Is my understanding. So.
Yeah, they've listed it. They definitely have not listed it by micro episode. So there's like 2 episodes and they're like 70 minutes long. So you can't just like search for what you want in there. Yeah. But that's leading up to the big thing here. Mm-hmm. This might be something people have been requesting, at least one or both of us dive into for the longest time, with Superhero Slate, the show where we talk about TVs, movies, and superheroes, and that is the show iconically known as Smallville. That's right, Smallville. I believe 2002 is when the show adorned the airwaves, and my wife was a big fan of this show. She was like a weekly watcher. She said she'd shut the door in her bedroom because she tells me all the time about how she saved up her own money to buy herself her own TV when she lived at home, and she would get snuggled under the covers and watch the adventures of Clark Kent in Smallville. And I have to say, this show is very much a product of its time, but it's fun to think back about what people were thinking when this show came out, right? The superhero scene was very, very strange back in the early 2000s, right? The only other kind of Superman TV show would have been the Lois and Clark show, but I even remember that show being advertised on the airwaves, and it was not advertised as something kids should watch. I feel like every commercial or every trailer I ever saw for Lois and Clark was always about like, look at this relationship between this man and a woman. Oh, and surprise, surprise, the man is also Superman. So I was just like, this is not for me. This was not made for kids. This is for like an older crowd on ABC to watch. So when Smallville came out, I'm sure a lot of people were excited, right? The first time that we ever seen a younger Superman, you know, on the TV screen, a weekly adventure. And I'm sure it was also exciting watching the show evolve. You know, he slowly gains his powers. You know, at least I'm about, you know, I think like maybe 8 or 10 episodes into the first season, and he just only has a handful of his powers right now. So I imagine it's quite a journey watching this whole series as he gains different powers. You know, he doesn't have X-ray vision yet, but I am kind of curious, when's Clark getting X-ray vision? Or not X-ray vision, laser vision. That'll be very helpful. He already has X-ray vision. I think that's like episode 3. But it's so cheesy because they are using the early 2000s visual effects that they can. So there's just like I just can't explain it. It's just fun. It's kind of cheesy. It's quirky. It's I would say for the time it came out, I would say it's pretty groundbreaking. They were cranking out 20 episode seasons for like 5 or 6 seasons. There's a lot of content here to go through. I have seen the screen caps and the clips and the screenshots of eventually when they put like a proto Justice League together. They're all wearing basically these hoodies. And I know it's all going to be cheesy, but I have to say I am having a fun time. So, it's very much a monster of the week setup. And I have to say, I don't know if necessarily this is an original idea to Smallville, the TV show, or if maybe this idea was seeded in an earlier comic book, but they have Clark come down in the meteor with a whole meteor shower. So the whole premise of the show is these monsters throughout Smallville are people gaining powers is all due to shards of kryptonite that have showered the town. So people dig them up on their farms, it gets in their flowers, it gets in the bugs, and people basically get kind of like these cursed monkey paw powers, right? There's an episode that we watched with Amy Adams, who starts off in a fat suit, and all she wants to do is she just wants to be a high schooler that's thin. So she starts drinking these shakes from her garden that have kryptonite in them, and they make her thin, but at the same time, she has this intense craving for fat. So she becomes like a fat vampire where she like lures high school boys into like basements, and she sucks the fat out of their bodies. So it's just like so cheesy and like so hilarious, but like it's starting to get kind of addictive. You start to get connected to these characters and everything. So I know you have a different opinion on this, but for me, coming at this so much later with so much more kind of perspective on the horizon of like when this came out and everything, I have to say I'm having a pretty good time, and I think there's a good chance. Stay subscribed, listen. I think I might have more and more updates of this show over the next couple of months.
So you have 10 seasons to go through, not 4 or 5. They did 10 full seasons of this, 20 to 22 episodes each. I remember watching this. It actually came out in 2001. I remember watching this kind of growing up, and then I gave up on it like 2 seasons, 3 seasons in. I'm like, I'm just not. It's a lot to watch, right? They're hour long. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's a full-fledged drama. So about 44 minutes without commercials.
And it was on the WB before it became the CW. So I didn't like if I could get the WB in, I'm not spending my time watching Smallville on it, kind of thing. Because I didn't get good reception for the WB in my area. But I'll tell you, I had started hanging out with these people in 2008, and they were obsessed with it, and I wasn't having it, man. This show just rubbed me the wrong way for a lot of reasons, and I think it was because of it was a teen drama kind of show, and it's totally understandable. I could totally get why somebody would try to jump into this show when it was airing. Like, what's going on here? I want to see like Superman. I want to see these powers. I want to see the cape. I want to see the suit. I want to see the aliens. Where's all the good stuff? So yeah, you have to be on board with the premise, or I can't imagine anybody just jumping into it like going, okay. Yeah, because I remember catching it much later. We were in college. Actually, it was about the end of our college run, Mike, when the Justice League one came out. And it's the only, I believe, my history, because I actually just listened to a podcast on this episode. It's the only episode in the entire series that is 2 words. And all the other ones are one word. If you go through and notice this which I think it was fun. But I also remember, what was it? The guy who played Starkiller in The Force Awakens, the voice of Darth Maul, I think plays Doomsday as well in the show. You're in for a ride. You're in for a ride because they're gonna get wild with some of these characters later on. But at the same time, like I turned off, possibly 6-7 seasons, and maybe that's where I kind of tuned out a little bit. So I really I'm not gonna go revisit it, but I'm glad you're enjoying it with a now that we have golden TV to watch, right? We have good shows that we can watch, that you can go back and watch this, because like at the time I was like, oh no, if this is peak superhero show, we're done. This is it.
And also I should say this is streaming on Hulu right now. I don't know who actually owns the rights to this TV show. I would think logically in my head, eventually a streaming contract would expire and this would end up on HBO Max with all the other Warner Brothers stuff. But who knows? This could have been something that was, leased out to a different production company, and maybe it is home at Hulu for the foreseeable future. I don't know, but you can check it out over there right now.
Well, it was WB. So Warner Brothers and then CW, which I assume still owns it. So I think it's a Warner Brothers. So it could go to HBO Max. If that's how they do it. I don't know who made it.
It makes the most sense. Okay. I looked it up right now. It is Warner Brothers. They are the distributor and the production company as well.
Okay, perfect.
But you always got to check on that stuff, because who knows? It could be technically like a CBS production.
Paramount Plus. Oh my gosh, they're in Smallville. But yeah, I mean, it's one of the things I just remember is ingrained in my head, the WB, the frog singing the WB commercials during
WWB, something like that.
Yeah, kind of thing. So I'm like, oh yeah, that's what it was on. So that's good you're going through that, Mike. I mean, thank God we can do that. Now I did the same thing and stepped back because we have Paramount Plus. I've never ever watched an episode of Star Trek: The Next Generation in my life.
Oh my gosh, we're like nerds going back and doing our homework right now, Chris.
So I always remember, again, I want to say, I believe what was channel was this on? Was this also on WB or like maybe channel 3, or I say 3?
I don't know. I mean, it would. I believe it would be CBS, right? Viacom, CBS.
Probably CBS. Yeah. So. I remember watching something else on CBS, and then on my little tube TV with my antenna, like I barely get channels in, and then I'd be playing games, and I'd go to turn the game off, and Star Trek was on all the time. The Next Generation. I didn't know what the hell was going on, but I knew that theme song like nobody's fucking business. I never watched an episode. I never cared to watch it on that old TV, but I was always aware of it and aware of the culture surrounding this show, right? In the 80s in Star Trek, and we hear more about Star Trek more and more. Like they keep going on. It's not in our notes, but apparently they put the 4th Star Trek movie on the calendar somewhere down the road, but we have no other information on it. But I went back and watched the first episode, and I knew one of the characters in this was a character named Q. Are you familiar with Q in Star Trek?
The only Q that I know of right now is QAnon, which is not good. So
not even the James Bond Q. I mean, come on now. Yeah.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay.
But Q is this like omnipotent being who is this like, he shows up and he can do anything. He's like some sort of like god level space alien kind of thing. And he's kind of in this judging the mettle of humans, and I didn't realize he was in the first episode. I just knew about him about later seasons because I've watched Picard. So I'm like, well, let's go back and watch this. And boy, this show actually has really good ship graphics and CGI for being in the 80s. Like the exterior of the ship looks really fantastic. And I don't know if it's a model and they filmed it or if it's actually like animated, like in high detail kind of thing. So I'm going to pay attention to this. And also, I didn't know this, the little saucer portion of the Star Trek ship, the Enterprise, can detach from the bottom at any given time.
No, I actually didn't know that.
I didn't know that either, and they did in the first episode. So I'm going to revisit Star Trek. I'm going to try to watch this. This is like an hour-long drama, right? Sci-fi. So I'm going to be trying to watch some here and there. Maybe I might do the what I call the Mike Royer method, where I go get a list of essential episodes and just watch those, because there's
you got to speed run through it.
Yeah, there's a lot of Star Trek going on, and I'm not really catching up to anything. But I mean, I'm like, if I'm not in love with Star Trek to begin with, I'm probably gonna find it hard to watch it all. But with Star Trek, being on the rise with the hitting on Discovery, right? Lower Decks, Picard. There's some good stuff going on here. I'm excited to kind of dive into Star Trek. So if anyone has any recommendations, please do let me know, because I'm venturing where no Chris has ventured before, into the land of Star Trek. So make it so, Mike. But this isn't a show about Star Trek well, it's almost about Smallville. Never mind, take it back. We're here to talk about superhero news, not olds. So we're going to jump into some news here with, I think, again, one of what I'm looking forward to most in the MCU on Disney Plus is the Loki show. We got our official trailer for the show this week. And Mike, you didn't even get to watch it until right before we recorded.
I just watched it. So yeah, sometimes trailers drop earlier in the week, and like I'm just not around like a screen where I want to ingest it at the moment. So I'm like, I'll just wait until Sunday before we record and I'll watch it then. And I have to say, this was great. This had everything I wanted in it. And to show my hand a little bit before we talk at the end of the show, I'm not having the best time with Falcon and the Winter Soldier right now. And this was like a breath of fresh air. Everything about this is great. It looks like there's amazing production design for all of these different sets. There's these really grand kind of special effects shots where we're kind of seeing either different universes or planets or the cosmos in some way. Tom Hiddleston looks hilarious with some of the lines that he's been given. So I'm really looking forward to like the writing and the storytelling. It made me feel a little bit like in the Umbrella Academy in that second season. And I think they maybe a little bit in the first season. I don't quite remember where they dabble with that kind of time travel office type environment. Yeah. So I really kind of love this weird ethereal plane that we're going to get to visit. And everything just looks so much more premium in this one. And I'm really starting to vibe off of this energy that you've had, particularly for this show for a while, where this was the streaming show that you have been looking forward to. And watching this trailer has finally put me onto it. So I'm so stoked for this.
I think one of the biggest things I'm impressed with is probably the simplest effect they're doing is with the doors between dimensions.
Oh, yeah. It's like frosted glass that they walk through.
Yeah, and it's just like a rectangle pops out, and then they walk through it, and you're in the new scene kind of thing, or the new area. And that looks pretty dope for what it is. And it seems to be like they're leaning into what Thor Ragnarok did, a little more comedy, a little more humor with Loki, because there is a scene in this where they're like, please sign all these papers to verify this is everything you've ever said. And I believe he says, I don't remember. He's like, you can't be serious. And then that prints off, and he's like, you can sign this too. So I sat here listening to Mike watch it, and I heard him laugh actually quite a bit during this.
It was hilarious. I was very surprised.
Yeah. So it looks like Loki is working with the TVA, and there may be a couple of scenes where it looks like he may try to escape them to begin with, or maybe he's chasing somebody else down. I couldn't tell.
Yeah, it would be surprised not to imagine Loki escaping. I mean, they mention about how often he stabs people in the back in this trailer, which was so good, so perfect.
Yeah.
I checked with Chris because I often forget about the own news that we report on this show, and they have created a production company, at least to hopefully facilitate a second season of this show, so this could spin off into more and more. I think my single favorite thing about this is how they just casually refer to Loki, the other characters, as variant Loki, like how just like nerds would kind of like talk about these characters in like a comic book, like, oh yeah, none of us believe that this is the mainline Loki, this is the variant Loki, we don't really know what he's up to or how he's changed or if he'll be any different, but yeah, but this is variant Loki. And I was like, I like that, I like this a little bit.
Yeah, and I think to jump to the next bullet point I have here is that it does show the branching timeline theory, right? That
there's literally a graphic of that looks like a branch,
and they kind of showed that in the Endgame with the Sorcerer Supreme Tilda Swinton's character. So they actually show it here yet again, and I paused it. It's like 14 branches on the initial shot. So whether he does that or maybe there's other things going on, and he's like, we need your help. Because you have magic up your sleeve. You're a trickster. We're more of the FBI by the book kind of thing, right? It seems like a buddy cop kind of show, a little bit. So I'm excited to kind of see what they do with that. Fun fact: the actress who seems to be like the judge there is Judge Renslayer, and the last name Renslayer is actually the name of the character Kang falls in love with. That's his wife, or I guess the love that he's trying to save in Earth's Mightiest Heroes. You remember that? Like her last name was Renslayer.
Yeah.
So this could tie into Kang and his time traveling abilities and Ant-Man and the Wasp a little bit as well down the road.
Like it.
Which again, we talked about the potentiality of a season 2. the show doesn't have to do the same gimmick, right, of time travel and stuff like that. But it would be nice to see, this is not the Loki we get, because after he would actually have to go back to the Avengers, right? And the Loki we get in the Dark World, and I believe he showed back up in Ragnarok. It's a little different kind of character. So this being a variant of that, maybe he could be brought back a little bit to the main universe. I hope not. I think that should be a permanent thing in some of these comic book movies.
I think if he does ever make it back to the main universe, I really hope they don't play it off with a joke, right? I know Thor. Mm-hmm. He's a very jokey character now, which I'm totally okay with, but he watched very emotionally a lot of people die to Thanos' hands at the very beginning of Infinity War, including his brother gets strangled. He literally changed colors. That would be traumatizing, and even if you are kind of like this god. So if this version of Loki does come back to the main timeline and eventually meets up with his brother again, I expect that to be an emotional moment and not played off with an immediate joke, because I think that would be kind of that wouldn't be believable to the situation. So
as long as we don't have the team who did Thor: The Dark World in charge of it, they won't make death a funny thing. So I think we'll be fine there. But yeah, I mean, hopefully he does. Maybe he doesn't meet up with Thor. Maybe he's doing other stuff, runs into other characters, right? Maybe this variant is the one they keep. Like, we need you to help us deal with other time stuff. Possibly it's the one. Maybe he shows up in the what's that animated show, What If, coming up. So we could see some of these branches become the What Ifs for that show. So I'm excited. I think the effects look on point. The strong cast between Tom Hiddleston and Owen Wilson, I think, is going to be a great show, and a lot more mystery that we don't know about. So knock on wood there. Black Widow, we announced recently, got pushed back to July 9th for theaters, and is getting a premiere access release, right? And this delay from this May release, a couple of months, has actually tripled the box office forecast for this movie. Kind of not saying it's coming back to normal, but more people are open to go to the theaters the back half of the year than this current front half.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. I mean, at least here in the United States, we hit a record-breaking vaccination number just the day before we recorded this podcast. So, if things go well, it's not hard to project when things could possibly be somewhat going back to normal for the movie theaters. So, companies like to follow the money, so they are following the money right now.
Right, and also I think people are like, okay, we have the option of theater and online, so that's actually like, I'm more apt to watch this movie because they're giving me choices too. I think so I'm excited to kind of see what that goes like. I know a lot of people are like, oh yeah, I got to go to the theater. I think we've talked about it in depth. I'm going to do both, so we can watch it as many times as we want without having to go back to the theater. But I'll go to the theater the first time, kind of thing. Along that road. Currently, if you go to the Disney Plus app, Mike, you can add this movie to your watch list already. So you'll know when to purchase it on Disney Plus or be able to when it's released. So check that out whenever you get a chance. Shang Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings action figures are hitting. Do you know why these action figures are hitting, Mike? Because this movie's been delayed several times.
This was supposed to be out already. The plastic has been made.
Yes, they have done that, and I have a couple of them here. So I'm not there. There are story spoilers on these toys, so just avoid things. I don't think they're huge spoilers, to be completely honest. So, but I just want to share a couple facts I didn't realize, that the character Wenwu will be Shang-Chi's father in this movie, and then Xialing is his sister as well, who both get action figures in the upcoming thing. So my presumption is they're all very martial artsy family. So we're going to see them all get some action scenes and see kind of what that dynamic is. Whether it's good or bad, I won't tell you. So I'm very much looking forward to this movie and how it kind of expands the universe. And we finally get the 10 rings after them threatening with them since, again, 2008, the first Iron Man. So anything else you want to add to that? I'm not going to tell you anything, but if you want an after the show, let me know.
Patiently waiting for a trailer, right? Yes. We haven't seen Simu Liu even in costume yet, right? Outside of just like concept art. So
toys.
We don't really have much to see here, so I want to see more.
I will tell you, the concept art we have seen from for this and the toys look pretty comic accurate, so I'm excited to see it. I want to see, this is something we were very worried about, Iron Fist, right? A martial arts character, right? One of the martial arts masters. You got his TV show, like, great, let's see some martial arts. Let us down on 10 different rings of levels of down, Mike. We got we got so low on that. I'm really excited to see a cinematic martial arts film kind of pick that up and what that looks like. I know we're just chomping at the bit to get to this Mortal Kombat movie in a couple weeks at the end of this month, but I don't think that a B-level Mortal Kombat movie is going to take on an MCU level martial arts film kind of thing. So I'm excited to see what this looks like. Trailer, bring us on the trailer. Give it to us. Falcon and the Winter Soldier. We're not going to talk about it right now. This is just announcements. After last week's episode, Marvel announced a site based on the city of Madripoor. And I only bring this up because I was told this through a news article, but I cannot find the sources. Apparently, it has removed some references to like X-Men and Shang Chi in this site somewhere. I visited the site. It's a pretty basic site, if I'm going to be completely honest.
So yeah, there's not much here. So you're saying that there were elements published on the page and they had to go back and retract them?
Yes, and I don't have any screenshots saying they existed. Like there was references to Mystique. There was some other stuff, Shang Chi and the his nation and then the Ten Ring stuff, and I can't find them. I've never seen sources of this, but I saw the news article. So if anyone has seen this website before, it got removed. I think my theory is these are not X-Men references for the MCU, but someone who was put in charge of this website said like, hey, it's about Madripoor. Go do your research. They saw all the X-Men stuff, being, for pirates and a port for X-Men and stuff like that and mutants, and put it on here and not realizing it wasn't part of the actual MCU's Madripoor.
Who knows? And we don't really know what those references are. Like, so if it was in the source code, like when you're coding a website, you have to identify certain elements, and you can literally make up any word that you want. So if you're just trying to what class do I want to give to this header? I'll just call it Mystique just because it'd be fun, And then a nerd use the source code and go like, oh my god, Mystique confirmed. So who knows exactly what that is. But it's a fact. Eventually we're going to get to the X-Men, so no one should be like totally shocked that eventually we'll see X-Men references at some point.
I found one of the images. I just did a quick search here, and it's like the ship name is Mystique, and it's nothing really about the actual X-Men. So they went back and took off some of these names of these ships because they're like, people will probably extrapolate too much. They learned what WandaVision did to these shows.
And making nerds go crazy.
Yeah, so I think they also made fun of WandaVision on SNL this weekend. So if it's kind of like Celebrity Jeopardy, but it wasn't. It was like, what's wrong with that picture kind of thing.
Okay.
But anyway, so I found one of the images and sent it to you, Mike, and it looks like...
Yeah, I just checked it out, yeah.
It's like very innocently. Like I would never have been like, oh my gosh, this is confirmation of X-Men in the universe. It wasn't. This summer, June 4th, I guess that's not summer yet, it's still late spring. Avengers Campus is opening at Disneyland over there in California, Mike.
Damn straight.
And we got a video here to kind of showcase some of the facilities, kind of going there. There are at least 4 locations that I know of. The Worldwide Engineering Brigade, which stands for WEB, which if you can't figure it out, that's Spider-Man's place. Mission Breakout, which I think has been there for years. And you've ridden on that, correct, Mike?
Mm-hmm. It is super fun.
Perfect. Doctor Strange's Sanctum is another location. And then Hank Pym's Test Kitchen, which is the dining choice there. So.
Yeah, and if you're not super familiar with Disneyland, or if you've been there once or twice, this basically, if I remember correctly, used to be the Bugs Life land, which was very much targeted towards kids. I only ever walked through it once as more of a shortcut to get from one end to the park of the other, so I don't even really remember what Bugs Life rides or experiences may have existed there, but they seem to be kind of just replacing experiences with experiences. There's really no new rides here, but there is supposed to be new stuff to experience. Like, basically what they've announced is like new ways to sell you things. There's like a couple new gift shops and restaurants, but there's also supposed to be like some sort of like Spider-Man show that's supposed to happen because they kind of talked about it a little bit with some of the Disney Park documentaries that aired with the Disney Plus streaming service, like over a year ago, where somehow like Spider-Man's going to be on some some sort of like crazy drone or something, and it's going to look like he's swinging around in the background or something. So I'm curious to see what that looks like in person. But as of right now, no new ride, but hopefully this is like a template to hopefully add a new ride eventually.
Yeah, and this there's like, well, why isn't this in Florida, not California, not Florida? Well, that's because of the Universal Park ride deal with Marvel. They still have those rights in Florida for some reason. We don't know the deals. We're not lawyers. We weren't there. But in California, that rule is not in place, so they can build a whole MCU scenario here. But also, they want you to go to every park. They're not going to make them identical for you, sadly. So I mean, this is a reason. I mean, I'm not going in June. I'll level with you, Mike, but probably hopefully within a year, maybe 2022.
I mean, this is just more incentive to get you out here to California because you've yet to go to Disneyland with me.
Yeah.
And we'll be able to experience some fun stuff. I know they're also doing some kind of re-theming to some parts of downtown Disney with some Wakanda stuff involved. So the biggest downside to Disneyland that most people know is they are limited on land space. This isn't just like the Florida swamp where they're able to buy like an entire county and make a theme park. Like they're like in Anaheim doing the best that they can to like build up and kind of strategically out and around and like just get rid of the old stuff and build new stuff to keep the park fresh. So I guess stay tuned because eventually I'll be able to experience this stuff when I'm all vaccinated.
Yeah, and they're open safely. And I'm honestly, I mean, I love Disney food. If I could say anything about going to the one in Florida, I like they've for a park that gets thousands of people a day, they have somehow made a way to make this quick and easy and delicious all around. And I'm like, okay, that's impressive. Since we were talking about fast food engineering early on. So I'm very excited to see what the Marvel food samplings are here in Hank Pym's test kitchen and see what they do. Maybe they do like little bitty food that tastes like something else. Like, they shrunk it down. It's like, oh, it's a little turkey. Maybe it tastes like turkey kind of thing.
That's basically what like a bouillon cube is, right? Like, oh, this is a whole turkey boiled down into a cube. Like, oh God, it's so salty.
Yeah.
It's because it's a bouillon cube.
Exactly. I always think of Willy Wonka, like when they shrink down, like, or was it Violet's chewing the gum that tastes like a full course meal kind of thing. So we'll knock on wood there. But speaking of other parks, I don't know. Does California Disney have a Star Wars park?
Yes, we do. We have it. Okay. I visited it, unfortunately, just before they were able to open up the big ride, the one that's also down in Florida. It's like a Kylo Ren, like some sort of ride.
It's the Millennium Falcon one, isn't it? Yeah.
The Millennium Falcon was the one ride that was open. Their second ride
is the one that's on the tray, like the thing. That
it's like you're in like a robotic cart that moves from like area to area inside of this thing, and I think like Kylo Ren's involved and stuff. It's supposed to be pretty cool, but it wasn't open.
That's the one where 4 people like control it, right, or something? Or was that the Millennium Falcon?
That's the Millennium Falcon. That's the more interactive.
So it wasn't open when I got in, but I mean, I was standing on the Pixar side of the fence looking into the park while I was there, so I didn't get to see it. But I know that Disney parks in Star Wars, huge opportunity right now. They've opened this up, but they have found a way to create literally a lightsaber with a blade that rises out of the handle. And some Disney park executive had this at a meeting earlier this week. There's no video or photo, sadly, but there were previous patents that explain how this works with like plastic cylinders and motors that make it grow and retract, and there's like a light strip in it that makes it look like it's extending like a real lightsaber. And if they don't start selling these immediately, I'm going to be very upset, like within a year.
Yeah, I'm sure that these are going to be extraordinarily expensive, but of course nerds will buy it for sure. And the way that it was described, at least from somebody that actually saw it happening, is the executive that was holding had a very kind of bulky, unrefined hilt, so the speculation is that is going to be trimmed more down to something more realistic. So I guess maybe slightly expect that hilt might be a little extra large to house all this stuff, so it might not be exactly what a nerd wants, but I think the description was that it comes out like in a snap. This isn't like a motor that you hear zzz, and like it slowly rises up. It's supposed to be pretty instantaneous, and the only thing that I could think of that does that I've ever seen is this thing that is always showing up like on social media, like on TikTok and feeds, where it's like this coiled up like metal ribbon that is like secured by like a little fastener, and like when it's all compressed, it just looks like a little disc. It looks like like about half the diameter and about the same thickness of like a hockey puck. And then when you release it, it's basically like a huge ribbon spring that springs out instantaneously, but it has a little bit of rigidity to it. So you can like spin it around, and it almost kind of looks like the things that you've seen, like, you know, maybe like Nightwing or Robin do, like in the Batman universe, right? It's like a retractable like pole. So what I've read in the comments of every time I see like this video posted, it's just like, oh, that's pretty cool, but you can't like hit anybody over the head with it, or if it'll just like fall apart. So I'm thinking maybe they're doing something like that. They have like maybe some sort of maybe clear, maybe like spring ribbon that shoots out instantaneously, and then like you said, like an LED ribbon inside of it to glow. So I don't know, we'll see. I'm pretty excited. There was another toy that I saw, unrelated to Star Wars, but also with a big price tag on it, a fully automated transforming classic like Optimus Prime that has like all of these servos and motors in it. It's like $700, but like it's a semi, and then you hit a button on a remote control and it just transforms into Optimus Prime. And after it transforms, you can even control it like a robot. It'll like walk around and it'll do like poses and stuff. So yeah, I think motors and servos and like little microcontrollers are just getting cheaper and smaller and more affordable.
If you can get them right now.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
If you can get them right now, it's impressive. Yeah, I think this is, you know, that's always been the dream, right? Having something, you know, maybe these aren't lightsabers you go smacking each other with, but, you know, for cosplayers or people who like want to do videos, you got to have something cool like that, right? Like that's not just like, oh, we need to take a video and go post effect it later. Because, you know, I mean, that was the one thing when I went to Disney World for my honeymoon, I bought plastic lightsabers, love them, the ones that retract and snap back out. But, you know, they don't go all the way into the hilt sometimes, or, you know, the ones that do are the cheaper ones you used to buy at the stores. And now they have the ones that have the detachable blades, right? The glass blades that you can get there, and you get when you build your own. So I think that's cool. But like, I want to see what this looks like. I want to see the video. Show us the footage, Disney. We know it exists. So
yeah, there's supposed to be also a new lightsaber experience coming to, I don't know what Star Wars park it was, but it's like you're supposed to put on AR glasses, and you're supposed to be able to, like, you know, do the whole like force, you know, block the laser with your lightsaber. So we'll see if that that probably tees into that gift shop. You leave that, and then you can buy your lightsaber there.
Yeah, and that they have that kind of already in what was the Darth Vader VR game, right? Like the Darth Vader's dojo, whatever. So I imagine if they can do that, they have that built up, and then just instead of a background, make it clear with AR. I think that would be perfect with that. That'd be pretty fun. So knock that on wood. Keep it in the realm of Star Wars. The Bad Batch. Reports are there's at least 14 episodes in this series. At least the composer said he was working on episode 14 recently on a podcast, and I'm like, wow. I expected like maybe 6 or 8. This is at least double, you know, what I had averaged out in my head. So I think that's pretty impressive, right? I mean, it means they gotta have a little bit of faith in this, or there's more that they're not showing us. Maybe we're only seeing the first, you know, 3 episodes in the trailer. What do you think?
I mean, also, I'm sure Filoni is an executive producer on this. He might not be running the room, if you will, but he's definitely attached, and he's pretty much a made man over there after Mando. So if he wants 14 episodes, he gets 14 episodes.
Yeah, we've got money from you, man. Yeah, you get to make some show. I'm excited to kind of see what they are and where these characters end up along the way. Maybe it'll be definitely interesting. So. And speaking of other Filoni created characters, Ahsoka, the log line for the upcoming show has been reported. Maybe give us a little insight on the plot of this series. And this is kind of followed what I talked about a little bit. Is, you know, based on the end of Rebels, Ahsoka Tano is on the hunt for the evil Grand Admiral Thrawn in hopes that it'll help her locate the missing Ezra Bridger, the young Jedi that disappeared with Thrawn many years ago at the end of Rebels. And apparently she'll pick up Sabine Wren along the way, and you know, find Thrawn and maybe Ezra along the way. There's no confirmation, but I think that's a pretty good log line to get the show up and going. So, I mean, any insight to that? I know you haven't watched Rebels. I know you're a little less.
I don't know much about Rebels, but it sounds like Thrawn was like he was the antagonist for that show. I know I watched just a couple episodes of the first season, and Thrawn was just kind of like a larger enemy, and there was somebody else lower on the line. I think it was like another colored alien, but it wasn't blue. It was like a different dude. So they obviously graduate to Thrawn at some point in time during that series, but Ahsoka's episode was badass in Mandalorian, so it really, they could have given me any long log line. It could have said Ahsoka Tano opens up a restaurant and just serves sandwiches for 8 episodes.
Does she take over from Dexter Jetster?
Yes, that diner.
Oh my gosh. I love it. That's the best place to be. I wish they put Dexter Jettster's Diner at a Disney, right? That's the Star Wars diner that you need. So sign me up. Well, I mean, yep, Ahsoka, great show. I think I'm looking forward to it. Switching up a bit, Mike, you've been playing Final Fantasy VII Remake.
Yes,
a little
right
bit.
on time. I saw it trending this weekend, and I think it's the year anniversary of the remake coming out, which is funny. I guess people will celebrate an anniversary of anything, even a remake of a video game, the year after it came out. But yeah, I've been playing it, and it's fun.
Yeah, I think it came out like right in the middle of the pandemic too, so it was like a perfect kind of thing. Like I think that what was the Animal Crossing game came out around the same time.
Yeah. I just got my first summon, Ifrit, or how do you say it? Ifrit. Yeah, I never know how to say these names, but I just used my first summon, and I was like, oh, this thing's badass. I can give it commands and stuff. So cool.
Yeah, my PlayStation is not hooked up right now, but I hope to get back to it eventually. But anyway, talking about Final Fantasy VII, the sequel movie Advent Children. Complete release hits 4K Blu-ray and digital coming up. There's a pre-order for this. It's coming out soon. Now, I did not know this, but apparently, like many games from Square Enix, the Final Fantasy world, like all those, what is it, the Kingdom Hearts games, like 2.5 HD remastered Dreaming Edition. They come out with Advent Children Complete, which adds 26 extra minutes of extra footage to this movie, which is wild. Like where they just rendered out 26 extra minutes and then didn't put it in there, which seems like a lot of work for 2005. But this movie set 2 years after the original game, not the remake, but I feel like they look the same whenever you look at them. So if you're a big fan of that and you want to get the 4K upgraded version of this, I didn't even think now correct me if I'm wrong, when they render out stuff like that, do you think they were rendering in 4K back then, Mike, or do you think
I don't know?
How do they
That's
upscale
actually something
this?
I was thinking of too. Like the kind of programmatic side of my brain would think the best way to make a CG animated movie is to make it and get it 100% finished, and the last thing you have to do is just hit your export setting and then just render whatever your computer can handle. And then it's almost like you've kind of future-proofed yourself. Come back to this movie in 10, 20 years with a better computer, and now you can render it at a higher level. But I have a feeling that's not how it works. I'm sure it's a little bit more cobbled together at the very end. Oh, we got to slide this last clip in here to hit this due date. We don't have time to do everything perfectly, yada, yada, yada. But if the Advent Children, if this was intended at any point in time for a movie theater, right, you have to kind of hit a minimum resolution to do that. So yeah, maybe they did render it at a higher level that wasn't readily available for the DVD when it was released.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how that works because I'm thinking I was actually thinking about this earlier because I'm weird like that. Most films that were filmed digitally in the early 2000s, right, they were limited by the pixels that they filmed, so they were probably filming maybe 1080, maybe 2K, maybe a little higher, but when they go to upscale those to 4K, they don't actually have those pixels there. So what do you do in that situation? Well, you have to go through like a 4K upscaling resolution kind of thing, and maybe they did that with this. Maybe they had the I wouldn't say it's vector files, but maybe the animation was there, and then maybe they could hey, we're gonna move the slider up a little bit more now that our computer can handle it.
Hey, I mean, speaking of upscaling, my wife used to work over, for the Flash over at the CW, and when they were doing the big crossover with where they brought back the Smallville farm and those set of casts and those sets, they had to get an establishing shot for the Kent farm that they just didn't have on set, so they actually had to track down the old cassette tape that held that information, and then they had to digitize it, and then they had to send it off to an specialty upscaling place to get it ready just to air in HD on TV. So yeah, there's definitely houses out there that can upscale your stuff, but if you're starting straight from a digital point of view, that might not be much of an issue.
Yeah.
And another thing too is, since I'm always coming across a bunch of random stuff on the internet, there was one where there's this group of just developers, or maybe it's not, maybe it's just one person that's really, really into it, where they're upscaling old Final Fantasy games. I think it was, so this would have been probably in the Super Nintendo era. So let's just say like Final Fantasy V. I don't even know what that one looks like, but let's just say it. And they what they're doing is they're putting it through like this upscaler, and they're like upscaling all the graphics and everything, and it looks really, really cool. You can actually make out a lot more of the details, because even back then they would make these assets, these computer assets, and they couldn't render it quite all the way to play on the video game consoles they're making them for. But if you go back into those original files and you render out some of them now, they look even better than they used to. So I mean, that's basically what Final Fantasy Advent Children is, right? It's just another Final Fantasy game with no interactivity.
Yeah, I mean, it's I would say it's a whole different. If you go look at the original 7 and Advent Children, you're gonna be like, oh, how'd they get this much of a guy out of a little sprite? It's interesting. But I know I remember reading it was earlier, maybe this year. Was it that the original Final Fantasy 7 had been upscaled using like AI tactics rather than that? But I mean, I just think, like, 'cause I went to film school, right? Everything we shot was on film, and when you shoot on film or tape, guess what? There's no pixel resolution, right? Because there's no pixels on video, so it depends on how much you scan in. So whenever they like, oh, we're releasing a 4K remaster version, it means they had to go back and actually like go through each frame of the film, scan it and clean it up and do that. I'm actually part of a group that's doing that with Star Wars, the demastered editions. I think we've talked about before, right? Mm-hmm. They're actually going back to getting old film canisters and reels as a fan project, so it's not a Disney thing, but like they're actually like restoring Star Wars back to the original theatrical version as much as possible, but also doing it at a 1080 and 4K level, which is impressive. That's a huge undertaking. So for a fan project, but anyway, Advent Children. If you want to know what happens after the original Final Fantasy VII, this is set 2 years after it. You can go pick this up and watch it. I don't know if it's streaming anywhere. I couldn't tell you where anime movies or Final Fantasy movies stream, but you'll probably be able to find it. Could be on Netflix. We'll talk about that here in a second. But first, Into the Spider-Verse 2, Mike. I always forget this movie's coming because I think they're going to need to get a better name for it. But right, but like into another Spider-Verse.
These beautiful artistic animated films, they take a while to make. So you hear about them and then you don't hear about them for a long time.
Well, and the cool part is when we learned about this movie, they took, and like each character has its own frame rate, has its own animation style, right? Because they're all from different universes. So it's not something you're gonna rush because you're like, oh, this one panel is great. Was that what 1 second? Like 1 second of film took a week? Is that how the original one kind of worked? I think. Something like that. Maybe it's the other way around. But maybe 1 minute was a week or something like that. I don't know. But either way, voice actor Christopher Daniel Barnes, who voiced the animated series Spider-Man, is in talks to return as Peter Parker in this movie, which I think that sounds pretty good to have him in there, right? Explore more universes.
Yeah. The 90s Spider-Man, the animated show, was my intro to the whole Marvel universe as a whole. I mean, I was a cartoon kid. Took me a while to pick up a comic book. Wasn't a big fan of reading as a kid. I just wanted to watch cartoons and movies and stuff like that. So this is what brought me into the whole lore of Marvel in general. You had not a lot of crossover, but you did indeed have crossover with some of the 90s Marvel stuff. You know, Spider-Man popped up with the X-Men. You would have a lot of multiple versions of Spider-Man show up in those later seasons of the 90s animated one. So yeah, this makes total sense. I'm so stoked for this.
An iconic show needs to be in this movie. And I think.
Oh, and they gotta have the. I believe it was like is it 9 Inch Nails that did the intro lick to it? I
don't think so. They didn't do it, but it has that metallic '90s guitar, right? Like I mean, I can't do it. I'll probably see if I can play it later because you made me think of it. Because it does the same thing because, the X-Men had the same kind of intro, right? Like the X-Men movies, for all their faults and wins, they actually never implemented that song once in any of their movies.
The intro was performed by lead guitarist of Aerosmith. I knew that there was a rock origin for sure to that song, but they got to put that lick in there when they introduce them. That'd be so rad.
Exactly, because every Spider-Man has an intro, right? And I think being that as iconic, I would love to see other stuff kind of dive into this as well. Maybe what was that? We don't have to dive necessarily into other TV shows. But what was that one Superhero Squad with that little chibi animated style kind of? The Superhero Squad animation would be fun to see, stuff like that. So, and then they always want the 70s or the Japanese Spider-Man who had the mech with leopard on.
I think that's almost been confirmed by Phil Lord and Chris Miller that we will be seeing a variation of Japanese Spider-Man.
Yeah, so I think they can go all out and bring more in because now we're used to the idea. Let's have some fun with it, and go down that route. So, good for him. And also, Christopher Daniel Barnes did a lot of the video game Spider-Mans later on after the show wrapped up, so you can check him out in those. Speaking of Sony properties, Spider-Man and more, Netflix and Sony have come into an agreement that all Sony movies starting in 2022 will be going to Netflix for their streaming run, if you will, for the first 18 months.
Locking it down. This is, I think this is a win for everybody, right? A lot of people are worried about studios acquiring other studios and just becoming these behemoths, kind of hinders competition a little bit. But I like that the idea that there is a future where movie studios can just be movie studios. They make hits. They make good stuff, and then after they hit their theatrical run, it goes someplace else, and they can make money off of that too.
Yeah.
So this is great because I have a Netflix subscription, and I don't have a Stars subscription. I think that's where Spider-Man is right now. You have to watch it on Stars or something like that.
So the current agreement is with Stars. So it's going from Stars to Netflix. I think that's a bigger win. Netflix is more universal, even though I don't have it. Personally, I could easily see myself, if I want to see these on streaming, get a Netflix account or share one. Also, I agree with you. I wasn't worried about Sony merging or being bought out, but everyone's making their niche streaming app, right? You got to have Peacock. You got to have Paramount Plus. You got to have Disney Plus. I didn't want another streaming app to watch the Spider-Man movies. So I'm glad that they're just Sony's yeah, we'll sell it. Hell, we'll make some money with this. That includes Spider-Man and Venom franchises, and I believe Morbius will be the first major release from the studio to be on the service. I use major release very loosely here, mostly from the press release. I don't think it's that. It's Uncharted. That's also a Sony movie that will be over there if you're looking to stream that. So that's a big win, and then also I read a little more details that this deal with Netflix and Sony includes a first look for Netflix for direct-to-streaming titles from Sony. If Sony or / Columbia, whatever they want to make, wants to make a movie for streaming, Netflix has to meet so many a year that they purchase, but they could also, pass on them as well.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if at some point in time Disney was in talks to possibly get the streaming rights, at least for the Spider-Man movies alone. But that also doesn't make a whole lot of sense because once you kind of take Spider-Man out of the equation of Sony, you're left with Jumanji and some other stuff. But
I believe it's James Bond.
The Spider-Man's maybe, but who knows what happens if MGM ends up selling that and where that could go. Maybe you can't get a long-term agreement with those movies. But yeah, I wonder if maybe just Netflix came in hard and was just no, we want this. We want one of the most iconic superheroes on our streaming service, at least for. Did they say it was 4 years? I don't remember quite the length.
I don't remember the length, but there's an 18-month exclusive window, which means that they could eventually be on multiple services. It sounds like. So I mean, as much as I know Spider-Man is owned by Sony, I just wish it was on Disney so we could have the full list of Marvel movies. I mean, I don't care if it's on multiple places. I wish we had it. Also, The Incredible Hulk. I know a lot of people are well, it doesn't really count. Well, there's still actors and things in this, and the upcoming She-Hulk movie will pull back actors from this. I wish they were all in one place so we don't have to go everywhere to watch all the MCU movies. So.
But at least it's on a pretty
popular
common denominator that is Netflix. So like we said at the top of the show with Netflix and HBO Max kind of being tastemakers, once 2022 rolls around, I bet we'll see more people making social media posts about Spider-Man movies because no one has Stars. Nobody's watching Spider-Man over streaming right now. It's, a lot of people probably own it and are watching it that way. But yeah, once Netflix puts it on their homepage, people will be talking about Jake Gyllenhaal and Mysterio all over again.
I also I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, was it American Gods was on Stars, and Stars just canceled it after its 3rd season. And I saw a bunch of people like, well, there's no reason to even have this streaming service anymore. So
yeah.
I feel Stars streaming is going out the window pretty quickly if they don't.
Well, yeah, it looks like Lionsgate, one of the other studios that is kind of just out there without a streaming service, owns Stars as well.
Yeah.
So who knows? I'm just expecting maybe somebody to scoop up Lionsgate at some point in time, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, maybe the Lionsgate, was it Legendary is the other one that's kind of out there too, that kind of does the B movie stuff like that. But yeah. Yeah. Anyway, so all your big Sony stuff, that includes, again, Last of Us is going to HBO, which is interesting. But all the movies will be on Netflix after that. Jupiter's Legacy, an upcoming comic book to series adaptation from Mark Millar, part of the Miller World books, that contract he has with Netflix, right? Creator of Kick-Ass. I'm trying to think of the other stuff he did. Kingsman, creator of Kingsman. Mark Millar, he's been in a lot of other comic books along the way, but this is creator-owned titles. Jupiter's Legacy is finally getting a show on Netflix here. And we got our first trailer for it this week. I always forget Josh Duhamel is in this. Is that how you pronounce his last name? Probably.
I think it's Duhamel or Duhamel or something.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Either way, he's in it, and then he plays a young version and his older version of himself, which he looks weird, all aged up a little bit. But that's how the comic book goes. Are you familiar with Jupiter's Legacy?
No, not at all. I honestly thought that this was like some sort of weird offshoot of Jupiter Ascending, and I was like, well, the Wachowskis are connected to Netflix a little bit. But once I clicked into it, and the Mark Millar like kind of text pops up maybe about halfway through the trailer, and I was like, oh, this is part of that deal where they acquired Millar World. Is that what it's called? Millar World?
Yeah.
Where they acquired them quite a few years ago. So I was like, oh, this is the first fruits of that deal finally coming through. And I kind of ebbed and flowed throughout this trailer, right? It kind of starts out pretty generic of just like, oh, okay, another kind of dark and gritty and, kind of the alt look at what's it like to be a superhero. Like, what if superheroes were real? How would the world really treat them? And she's like, well, we've kind of seen that with the boys. We've seen it with some other stuff already. Even kind of Marvel is starting to move towards like, oh, kind of what's more of the realistic world look of superheroes out there now.
It's so gritty, Mike. It's so gritty.
And then you see Mark's name in the middle of it, and you're just like, oh, okay. This could be a possibility because he does know how to craft a story as well. I'm a fan of Kick-Ass. So maybe there's something going on here. And then they start to get into some of the more action set pieces, and it's just like, okay, at least this looks good. At least some of this action looks badass. Yeah. And then you kind of have to remind yourself, like, oh, did I have maybe similar thoughts about the Umbrella Academy? And that show ended up being amazing, probably one of my favorite shows kind of airing right now. Yeah. Very much looking forward to season 3. So, I mean, if they can pull off another Umbrella Academy, which gets Netflix top streaming money. Numbers. Yeah. Like it's not just one of the best. It's not one of the best performing superhero shows of all time. It's like one of the best performing shows for Netflix. Like, it's right up there with Stranger Things. So if they can pull the same thing off with this, there's reason to look optimistic. But I think it's more just kind of like, I think I asked you because it had been a few days since I'd seen the trailer. I was just like, okay, what's the unique selling proposition of this story, right? Like what's its niche? Because I couldn't even remember after I watched the trailer for a couple days. So I don't know if that's a good sign or a bad sign. I just remember there was like a superhero with like a beard and he was all sad about something.
It's not like this trailer, I will tell you, gives none of the story away, right? This is a what we call the money shot trailer, right? Like, oh my gosh, look at these slow motions, these superhero effects. This, what I would compare this to is a lot more like Invincible than Umbrella Academy in terms of tone, if you will. But like, this, because it deals with generations. We've been watching, right, the Invincible, right? It deals with, oh, your dad's a mom superhero and now you're young and you have superpowers. Like, what does that look like? Well, this is more of a negative reaction than Invincible. These 6 people went to this island, got superpowers. They've been fighting supervillains, around the world, but now their children have superpowers, and you like, this is my legacy. But the kids are like, kids these days, so they're dealing with
like brats.
They're dealing with like popularity and like, oh, we're models because we're children of superheroes kind of thing. So
yeah. Also, I don't know if it did them any favors that the trailer dropped, I think like the same day that Melissa McCarthy Thunder Force movie came out, and I was never going to watch it in general, but I just looked up the reviews for it, and they were not positive at all. Well, so you don't want to associate that kind of superhero feeling when you're watching.
I think it was just like, for them synergy, right? Like, here's our original superhero movie, and then here's our upcoming thing, because we don't have an Umbrella 3 Academy season 3 anytime soon. So like, okay, we'll do this, which I think that gives, knowing what they did with that show, I'm excited to see this. Also the showrunner for this for a bit was Steven DeKnight, who started the Daredevil series as well. So he's got a history of starting things and not finishing them, but doing good work along the way.
This random thing just popped in my head since we were talking about show creators and stuff like that. I forgot to mention at the top, when you watch that very first episode of Ewoks, you're going to see an amazing written by title of Paul Dini wrote the first episode of Ewoks. So if you're not familiar with, he worked on all of the Batman animated series stuff, even wrote on Lost. It was just hilarious to see his name up front before that. Well,
so you know what they say.
But the creator of the showrunner for Daredevil, I think that's pretty soothing.
Yeah, well, you know what they say. They can't all be winners, Mike. So that's pretty good. But Jupiter's Legacy, it was a 10-issue comic book series. I believe it ran, it ended around 2011, 2012 kind of thing. And I'm interested to kind of see what they do with this, because it's got an 8-episode season. Are they going to do the whole thing or not? Because there are some twists and turns in that book that are going to, play out very interesting in the show. It's not a friendly kind of book. Along the way, but I'm interested to see. I'm very interested to see what they do. And then there's also a prequel comic that came out later called Jupiter Circle. So maybe they intermix some of this back and forth, because Jupiter Circle is essentially how the quote unquote parents got their powers, a long time ago, 100 years ago. So I could see them mix and matching, kind of what they did with Umbrella Academy, right? They mixed Dallas and Hotel Oblivion kind of along the way, or not Hotel Oblivion. The first season, which is I forget what the first one's called. Anyway, I'm excited for this. Again, they're not giving anything away other than some effects and some big name actors in here. But
cautiously optimistic is where I'm at.
It all drops May 7th, so here in a month we'll probably have more. Netflix tends to hype their stuff up at the last 2 weeks or 1 week.
They know the attention span of people nowadays. They can't hold on to that information for too long.
Right. And that's also the same month MODOK comes out in May as well. So big superhero month for May all around. All right, here it is. We're at the Falcon and Winter Soldier section of the show. Episode 4 came out this week on Friday. There are spoilers below, so if you've not seen it, get out, go watch it, come back. If you have seen it and you want to listen, go on ahead. And as always, if you had thoughts, feelings, make sure you tweet us, message us, email us. I don't care how you get a hold of us. We'll listen because we know you're watching it. I see on Twitter when people are watching this stuff, Mike. I see our listeners interact with each other. That's awesome. That's beautiful. So I know people are watching it and they're upset when they don't get to see it like the first day, because I was ruined a little bit on this episode, and I was just on a normal work day, and I was like,
no, spoilers,
you sons of bitches! Like, whether I like it or not, just wait, until that afternoon to give me some stuff. So, episode 4 landed this week of 6. I'm gonna be honest, Mike. I think this was even though I'm on a more positive note than you, this was an upswing from last week's for me a little bit. I think the ending is what there are some much better fight scenes in here. I think I know you're not a fan of the Zemo dance, even though I sent you the 1-hour cut that Marvel released this week. I think they're having fun with it, and that's great. At the expense of the release the Snyder cut people, because they can be very much vulgar assholes in that world. They can be nice too, but Marvel's at least having a little fun with that. But I think the fight scenes were awesome in this. It's great to see the Dora Milaje outside of Wakanda kind of thing come up, and I think we got that history of how Bucky got his, we get to see him the first moment he wasn't brainwashed for a moment, which I think we talked about last week. I'm like, I think that's coming, and we did get it here. I don't think we talked about that last week, did we? The Ayo showing up at the end of the episode.
Yeah, it was just it was the stinger at the very end of the episode. Yeah. So there wasn't a whole lot to talk about there.
Yeah. Because I saw him pick up the little bead. It's
I found your marbles, lady.
Yeah. Oh, it's right here. Yeah. We gonna go play. Yeah, I think I had a better upswing. I don't know how you feel. I don't think you're having a good time with this show, but
I will start out positive and point out the 3 moments that are good in this.
Okay.
At the very, very, very beginning, we do see Bucky and the origins of kind of him healing in Wakanda with I can't remember her name, but part of the Dora Milaje.
Ayo. AYO. Yeah.
Yeah, so we see her there, and I love the way this episode started because there's so much emotion behind it, right? We get to see Bucky, like he's at his like lowest, like he not lowest, but also they're almost like tears of happiness too that he's finally broken out of this chain.
If I can interject, I believe the actor Sebastian Stan, if there's any reason he deserves like an Emmy or whatever for this TV show, is that scene right there. Like he doesn't say a word, but he sells it the whole way through.
Yeah, great moment there, and I'll circle back to that moment after I mentioned the other 2 things, and the other one was the Dora Milaje fight scene. That was so great. Like anytime you interject any sort of Wakanda energy into anything MCU, it's absolutely amazing. And it makes me very excited for the Wakanda TV show in whatever form it possibly takes. Because if we just get more of that, I mean, holy cow, I'm on board 100%. And then the very, very moment at the end, right, where we get to see a Wyatt Russell with the bloody shield, just the juxtaposition there of imagery is just really, really great.
The turning point, I believe. I'm going to call it the turning point of the show, really, because...
Yeah, that's probably a good way to look at it, too. All of those 3 moments were very, very, very good. I just am not liking how anything is being stitched together. To me, it just seems incredibly messy, like very amateur, and like I have notes that I could go through here, but you know I'll just kind of go through here just little bit by bit of just things that are popping into my head. Like if you go back to the very beginning of like Bucky starting with that strong performance, to me it just reminds me of how flat and boring this show has been for me. Like every character is just some combination of angry or smarmy. Like nobody's really showing any range, which is so upsetting because I know all of these characters have range. Even watching Russell Riot and Lodge 49, I know all of these people can tackle so much better material than what they're being given. And everybody's always talking about the most interesting things that I want to see. Like, I think you will also agree that a flaw that the show has is we're not really 100% sure what the Flag Smashers are doing. I mean, we kind of have the energy of that they're fighting back against, you know, corruption in some sort of way, but we never have gotten a chance to see it. Everybody's talking about how these people have come back from the blip and they've been displaced in some way, but they're only telling us, they're not showing us. Like, I can't connect to these quote unquote bad guys in any way at all because, like, I don't know where their homes were. I don't know where we are half the time. We just seem to be in some sort of generalized Eastern Europe. And are they supposed to be there? Were they never there? No one's accent makes a lot of sense. And everybody's like not being tracked and also being tracked at the same time because characters just kind of show up out of nowhere. It seems like the new Captain America, and what is his name? Star Lad? I don't remember what his character
name was. It was Battlestar.
Yes, it was Battlestar. They seem to just kind of like show up conveniently when they need to be there, but also there's this whole crux of them trying to hunt people down. So the getting from A to B is just very, very messy in general when you're just talking about characters just moving throughout the show. So that's when I get to things just like seem messy, and it just reminds me of like this iconic thing that I remember from the Russo brothers, and I think this was around the time of the Winter Soldier, and I would say this is very, very relevant considering these brothers are the ones that kind of created the on-screen characters that we are really seeing in this show. And they were quoted basically saying that when they're trying to like solve these problems, when they're making their movies and like telling their stories, is they know that they're not always going to get everything perfect, right? You know, when you're making a movie that's at a certain length, you know, you can't always solve every problem. So you have to go out of your way to make sure everything on the screen is popping off so well. You got to make sure that you're executing 99% of the time. So when there's something that you can't quite solve and can't quite figure out, the audience will just let that go. They're just like, okay, this is totally fine. I will suspend my disbelief for this one moment because I'm having such a good time. But I feel like in the show most of the time, I'm just like so bored. I'm just so unaffected until something kind of jarring happens, like blood on the shield. It kind of wakes me up a little bit, or the Dora Milaje comes in and like kicks butt with some spears. That kind of wakes me up a little bit. But most of the time, my eyes are just glazed over, and I'm just waiting for the conversations to just end and that we can just get to something interesting. It just kind of feels like a more expensive episode of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., and it's a little frustrating just because I feel like I'm on the outskirts here. Like, I'm watching all of these people have so much fun with the show, and I'm just like, I want to have fun. I want to have fun with you people because I love all of these characters. I love everything that's happening. It's just, I'm just bored. Like, they're not, even the action scenes are starting to get a little bit more exciting, but they're not even really creative, right? You know, one of the biggest downers when you're watching like a CW superhero show is like when the action scenes happen, you do kind of just check out because it's all just kind of just generic choreography of just like, okay, we're just trying to get to a means to the end at the end of this scene. I'm starting to get the vibes with this show a little bit. You know, I'm glad some shocking stuff has happened in the last episode, but I don't think that this can be entirely turned around for me, which is a little bit unfortunate, which is why it was very cathartic to see that trailer for Loki. I'm looking forward to that now, but everything here just I want more. I want more, and I want more intelligence to the storytelling. Because we were talking earlier about Madripoor, like talk about this like fantastical land where all of these like seedy villains operate and stuff like that. And I feel like even there last week, it wasn't even that interesting. They went to like one bar for a second, and everybody just seemed to be like just a generic kind of like a gangster just hanging around. So I don't know, Chris. I'm just not having a good time.
I'm actually having an increasingly good time. I think I'm on the other. I'm having a better time as it goes. I agree.
I'm jealous of you, Chris.
From a storytelling point of view, as someone who went to film school, wrote scripts, right? Like they are moving very quickly through this, and I don't know if it's because it's 6 episodes, or what. Because like, you know, the character John Walker, you know, I thought in episode 2 it was going to, you know, they kind of gave him a little bit of a backstory, right? Like, hey, this is why he was chosen as Captain America. Who chose him? You know, what's the backstory? They're trying to, you know, move very quickly through this, and I'm not sure what the speed is for it.
And what specifically drives me crazy about John Walker, just within the narrative of the own story that they're telling, is, you know, we do see him have the superhero serum now. So now he's kind of like this unstoppable force, right? But if he is supposed to be this icon that the military industrial complex were propping up to be this new symbol of American power after the blip, why would they let somebody who is so important just run around with one person for backup? He's really good at throwing a vibranium shield, but he is by no means invincible. One bullet to this dude's face would kill him, and they just let him run in and out of these very dangerous situations. And it's just like, that is totally contradictory of the reason why he exists. Yeah. So like, it wasn't until he got the serum in this episode does it now make sense for him to like run around gallivanting. It's just like, you're letting this very important asset to the United States just run around without backup. Like, it almost kind of seems like, I can't think of a current example off the top of my head, but usually when somebody is running around like playing make-believe or trying to be a symbol, usually it's the hypocrisy is backed up by like a fleet of soldiers behind them. It's just like, oh, you're not so tough without the fleet of people that are around here to protect you. But it's just like, why are they letting him run around? Like, he could easily just be killed.
But he's also, I believe, you know, being a Captain America, he seems to be more in tune with the military than actually Captain America was. Captain America was more of an Avenger, right? Not working with the military, excommunicated for a while, and this guy seems to be more military based and focused, like, right? Like, he's like, oh, like, I'm with the army and stuff like that. So it's very interesting that they're just letting him like have jurisdiction across the world in that kind of regard, whereas the Avengers have less jurisdiction because they're like, yeah, we're the Avengers, we're world saviors. So yeah, I don't know. I think I need to see a little bit more. I wish we had more with him. I think, you know, what little screen time he's got hasn't earned him the right from being like, oh, America's chosen boy to complete psychopath who murdered someone while everyone was filming around him. It is moving the cuts are very weird. It's been cut to move quickly. So I think there's more here that we're not seeing, or more that was written that they couldn't film. So I'm interested to see that. But at the same time, I did not expect the Wakanda history of Bucky to kind of come into play as much. I think that's been a very, very great touch, especially because they have personal vendetta against Zemo himself. It's not just, oh, you're a war criminal because you did this against the Avengers. You actually, I forgot for a while, he killed their king, and now they're like, okay, well, we're gonna come get him, kind of thing. So I'm excited to see how these Wakanda people, whether it's the Dora Milaje or anybody else, it comes into the show in the next 2 episodes. Where that ends up, does Bucky leave excommunicated from them as well along the way? I don't know. There's a lot to be questioned here. Will Sam's sister be able to get her boat, Mike? That's the real question at the end of the show. Will he be on a boat shrimping out there? I don't know. I want to see. I'm joking. That's me being facetious here. But I'm actually enjoying the show. I think the action scenes were much better this time around. I'm having a really, really good time with it, and I really have been enjoying this show. So I know we cut off there, but I'm still talking, so I hope you didn't say anything else. But
well, the thing is, whether you like it or not, it's almost over, right? There's only 2 episodes left. These 6 episodes runs move pretty briskly, week-wise, because there's only 6 weeks of it. So we'll be having a similar experience with Loki with the pace of it. So we'll just kind of see how everything shakes out.
Well, what's interesting, and what I was going to mention is, this show was originally supposed to be the first show, right, of the MCU proper, and I echo your sentiment. If this was supposed to be the first post-blip show, it's doing a piss poor job showing us how the world's handling it. It's very isolated. It is a character study, these characters, but don't mention global problems if you're not going to give us more of the global problem.
Like, I do like some of the storytelling things that they're trying to accomplish, where they'll show us like commercials of what this reappropriation council is supposed to be doing. So it is interesting, because that's kind of what you would see in the real world. You would kind of be making like this quote unquote, I guess, propaganda, if you will, of how people should settle back into it. I think they've even talked about like I could see like a blip insurance commercial like popping up at some point in time. So I do like those storytelling type of things. It's just not rubbing off super well. I feel like I got so much more of an emotional connection just from the one single scene that they had of the blip in WandaVision. Just that one brief moment in that hospital where people were coming back from being dusted was just more impactful and connected me to the story than anything else that I've seen in Falcon and the Winter Soldier. So, I know a lot of the time when people think of Marvel, the MCU, the first thing they think about is they think about the quips. They think about, just the fun action set pieces. But when I've been going back and watching some of these Marvel movies recently, people seem to forget just how dramatic a lot of these stories are. I mean, these are comic book movies, but they are action dramas. There's a lot of intense storytelling that's happening, and I want to see more of that on Disney Plus. Taken with a serious pen to paper, and I feel like I'm not quite getting as much of that as I want.
I'm also going to be more forgiving because this is their first foray into the television format. If you go back and watch the original Iron Man and Incredible Hulk and Iron Man 2, not really. They're better through rose-tinted glasses. If you ask me, like some of those, they do make some concessions early on. So I'm hoping.
I think
again
about it this way: WandaVision's Iron Man 1 and Falcon and the Winter Soldier to me is the Incredible Hulk.
I enjoy this way more than WandaVision, than I ever could WandaVision, because I feel. What I hate about WandaVision is there's a character in there, the villain, Agatha, who is given no reason why she's there and what she's doing. I think these shows both suffer from villain building, right? Like, we don't know what's going on with either of them or why they're there, why they happen to be going on. But I feel like this one, at least, like you said, is shorter. I think we're going to see probably some more results at the end of this. Is there a season 2 in the cards for this, or are they going straight to the movies? I don't know, but I know from all the trailers we've seen, there's going to be a scene where Bucky and Sam are throwing the shield, which I think is going to be like the end of the show at this point. So, I don't know. I'm excited to see. I've been reading rumors. There's some high-profile actor who's been cast in a very prominent MCU or Marvel comic or character role, and I'm excited to see this because they keep leading on with this. I'm like, where is it? Where's that
Yeah,
person?
I saw that news too, and then it gave me flashbacks to everybody thinking Magneto is going to be in WandaVision, which was ridiculous at its face. So
at least no one's speculating over this show. I will give them that. I don't see Mephisto being everywhere every week.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, my wife could tell you firsthand when we were watching WandaVision every week, since luckily we're working from home, lunchtime every Friday, we had to watch WandaVision. That was on the schedule. Make sure there's no meetings, make sure nothing else is in the way. We're watching WandaVision every Friday at lunch. Friday came along this week. I made my lunch. I sat down in front of my computer, and I thought like, oh, forgot Winter Soldier came out today. And I was like, nah, I'll watch it later tonight. You know, so that's basically where my excitement level is at. I'm still watching it on Friday, but I just can't get into it. But, you know, honestly, no one's perfect. The MCU is gigantic and sprawling. They're not always going to have hits for every single person. And they haven't even been perfect up until now. I'm not a big fan of Ant-Man 2, and, you know, I think Captain Marvel was just kind of okay. So you can't always have hits. But like we said at the top of the show, man, Loki looks amazing. So I'm here. I'm not canceling that Disney Plus subscription anytime soon.
They are, well, they got you for 3 years, Mike. That's why you can't cancel.
Yeah, that's true.
But also, I think, you know, there are learning things that hopefully they learn from and adapt as they go. You know, it's sad that we had to kick off Phase 4 with shows rather than the actual movies. But, you know, the next 2.5 years are going to be a huge influx of information and probably stuff we may like, oh, I wish we would have had this in order kind of thing. So, again, as we said at the top show, knock on wood, Mike. We're looking forward to that.
Everything cyclical. Let's make sure we don't get disconnected before we send this show off into the ether.
Exactly. Release the Falcon and Winter Soldier cut, Mike. No, I'm kidding. All right, Mike, that's the end of this show. That's the episode for us. We're going to be back next week, of course, with more. But if people want to know what you're doing, what you're up to this week, where can they find you at?
They can find me at Mike Royer Design on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. And you can read my webcomics and Property Brothers fanfiction over at pickledcomics.com. Chris, if people want to catch up with you, see what you're doing out there in the world, working on your arcade cabinet, getting your house ready to sell, you take really nice real estate photos, Chris. Maybe those will end up on social media at some point in time. People want to see that. Where can they find you?
You can find me on Instagram, Valdan87, or Twitter, Valdan, Valdan. I got my stickers in for the arcade today. The sides are this week. The arcade and the sides and the control panel is what I'm looking for. I gotta give a shout to whoever. If I can find the link on Fiverr, I'll put it in maybe next week. And then my friends Chad and Eben, who I play Fortnite with, work at a sticker company, and did this for me at no charge. I want to pay them. So if you're listening, please let me know what I owe you. But so far they're not answering. And I'm like, you sons of bitches.
Take my money.
They're fabulous. It's a great quality gloss and a cover on them. It's just superb. I'm so happy with it, and hopefully I get to finish it this summer when things kind of, you know, calm down a little bit. As you know, like Mike said, we're potentially looking at exploring options in the world right now. So that also, I mean, I'm trying to get ready for Comic-Cons, but those don't seem to be like they're coming up anytime soon, but we'll catch that later. People know more about our show, what we're doing, listen to our reviews, which we've got to have one coming up. We just I want to do one for Mortal Kombat, Mike. I'm going to be honest with you. I want to.
All right, we can do that.
Because what I'm going to do every week, I'm going to watch Mortal Kombat 1, then Annihilation, and then the new one at the end of the month.
Ooh, I like it. I'm liking it.
Yeah, I know. I heard the soundtrack for the new one. They take the old Test Your Might song, whichever one. It's got a name. It's not Mortal Kombat, and they've like made that, like, upgraded, but like spiritually for like 2021. It's fantastic. I think you'll love it. So,
oh, great. I love it.
But yeah, people know more about a show, all that stuff. Where can they listen to us at?
Oh, it's so easy. All you got to do is head on over to superheroslate.com. That is the best place to find all the avenues we host our show and to get our awesome show notes. So if you want to check out that trailer for Jupiter's Legacy, or if you want to see the little sizzle reel for Avengers Campus, head on over there. And also, if you look at the little featured image for today's episode, I put a little image of the patent for that lightsaber that's supposed to be popping up on there. You know, you can find more detailed pictures someplace else, but you know, if you want an easy place to look, just head on over to superheroslate.com and you can see that. We're on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, wherever else you love to listen to find podcasts. Please like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter and Instagram, and you can get merch at superheroslate.com/store. If you want to throw down with me about Falcon and the Winter Soldier, I took notes this week, so I got bullet points that I spared all of you from. But if you want them and you want me to throw them in your face, I will gladly argue Falcon and the Winter Soldier with you.
I'm going to interject and just say we're all nice people here here. No one needs to do this. But, you know, that's fine.
It'll be nice. It'll be a wholesome debate.
Oh God.
But if you want to agree and have maybe a better time on the internet, you can yell at Chris, and
that's
you
fine.
have a better time there.
Yeah, I'm very not confrontational. Everyone can have their own opinion. Thank you, folks.
Whether you disagree with me or not, you're still a super fan, and we love our super fans. Yep. If you want to be a super fan, all you have to do is share the show with a friend, share the show with a buddy, be part of the party of getting your vaccine, and run out there, because in a lot of areas now it's 16 and up. And I know if you're 16 and up listening to this, you got to be vaccinated. If you're not vaccinated in the next couple months, you're not going to be able to listen to the show anymore. Like it's not like we're going to say you can't, but like you'll put the earbuds in and it'll just sound like gobbledygook, and it'll be like static. And you'll be like, why can't I hear the show? It's just all static now. It's like, well, it's because you didn't get vaccinated.
After I got my first one, I noticed my cell signal was a little higher. It's those 5G chips in the needles, right? That I'm.
Yeah, that's true. Okay. I mean, if you want to listen to the show wirelessly, you gotta get the vaccine. It just makes our voices sound all that much better. And we're gonna be hiding secret code words that only vaccinated
Rusted.
people can hear. So
longing,
freight car.
Yeah,
is that the other one?
Homecoming.
That's the only one I ever remember.
One of the name of Spider-Man movies.
Oh yeah, that's right. Homecoming, freight car. So yeah, go get vaccinated. We love our super fans, and we'll be here next week. Howdy ho.
We'll see you then. Bye.
Thanks for listening, and don't forget to subscribe.
You mean he got through B movie somehow?